teach the students how to be more focused on how relaxed and how they're using their air at the very beginning. I wouldn't invite students to play. And some people are really big on using a ton of air, but doing it through force. Um, I mean, I know a lot of people will start their students with mouthpiece buzzing. I think that tends to invite a lot of tension.
We will get right back to our content, but I wanted to thank you for being such an amazing band director, that you're taking your time and listening to a band director podcast. There's many options out there, and I appreciate you very much taking in this content. I hope that you understand that your students are very lucky to have you as their band director, that you're continuing to grow, and that they are going to benefit from your improved skills as a band director. You can share this episode with any band director friends or other music education friends who can learn from this content, because good pedagogy is good pedagogy. And if you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com, and you'll be able to sign up on our Patreon platform to give at least $5 or $3 a month. And it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director Podcast. This is episode 220. I'm here with Ryan Johnstone from Rouse High School, Leeander ISD in Texas. Ryan, how are you?
Good, great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for being here. We're here because your program and you are kind of going through a really special time where you're performing at Midwest coming up this month. This is being released a couple of weeks before you're going to perform, and it's, I'm sure, a whirlwind. And I know you said you've done this before. We're going to get into that a little bit as well. But first, can you just talk about a little bit about Leeander ISD, Rouse High School, like sort of your feeder program, the community, everything that goes into what you do?
Sure, we're located in North Austin suburb, and the district has quite a history of great bands, music education, fine arts in general. We have six high schools, and Rouse is one of the newer. We were built in 2008. Our feeding schools are extraordinary and amazing. And both have been, well, actually, one has been to Midwest twice, and one's going to Midwest this year. So Styles Middle School with Darcy Williams and company, and then Wiley Middle School with Taylor Williamson and his staff, which includes my wife, Rachel, which is kind of a cool thing. So those are our two primary feeders. Styles is a little bit of a split feeder, and Wiley is really more of a 100% with just a few that go to a different school. But um, great feeder situation. Yeah, Rouse has been, like I said, 2016. I arrived in 2016 first as an assistant director in the program with a good friend of mine, Jason Robb. And I was there in that role until the pandemic, basically. And then he decided to go into marching band um, program coordination. And then after a while of thinking about it,
Hmm.
took it over and decided that I wanted to take the job. And it was literally, I told the principal the Friday before spring break, which happened to be the last day that we went to school that semester. And so I went through a period of months where I wondered if I made the right decision with everything that was happening. But it's all turned out great, and the program's grown and a lot in the last 4 years. So yeah, again, Leander's a great place. We have amazing teachers, amazing support. The community is very supportive um, with our programs. We do a really great job with fundraising and finding ways to support our budgets through that as well. Being able to bring in other clinicians and outside help, master classes, and things like that. So we're very fortunate to be able to expand upon what we're doing in the classroom and help our programs and students get to the next level.
You mentioned your middle school programs. I know that's not direct feeder, but some indirect feeders as well. What's the communication like there between the high school and middle school, and sort of does it go both ways? How often do you all speak? Because I know there's a lot of places where they're completely separate, and it is what it is. Yeah, what's your level of communication?
I think we do probably um, the I think we're operating on a very strong level of communication overall compared to other programs. This fall, just because of the craziness of preparing a marching band season, which in Texas is kind of crazy, and how we do that is maybe different than they do it in other parts of the country. Mainly that we would use class time on elements of our show. It wouldn't be like, I know in the Midwest, for instance, they'll, it's concert band during the class period, and then they're spending those extra hours on Saturdays and stuff like that. We have something called an 8-hour rule, which I'm sure people have heard about. But typically, in a normal year, we will set up a schedule between the high school director staff where we're visiting all of the performing bands at each middle school campus once per week. And so that's been really helpful just to kind of get to know the kids and try to support what's happening in those band halls and classrooms. This year, I did all of those visits so that the high school staff could focus on what they needed to do to prepare the other students, on all of the marching band things. And so I just kind of took care of that piece of it this year. But normally it's everybody, and so that's gone really well. Um, we don't typically. I think that the visits are very open, and all of the directors in front of all bands will always ask, hey, do you have anything to add or have anything that you want to say? Because they're at the beginning of rehearsal, they're doing fundamentals, they're doing things like this, and they get to music, they want that feedback. And so a lot of times, they'll ask, and I'll, try to support what they're doing, but also give them some things to think about, and all of these schools and all these teachers do a great job. Every time I go back, I'm just amazed with the progress. It makes me, it reminds me of my time in middle school, but when you're in middle school, you never feel like those gains are happening the way that they do, but it's pretty remarkable because they're younger and they have a lot of growth that can happen in a very short amount of time. But I would say overall that our cluster dynamic is very positive, and we do visit weekly. Sometimes the season gets to that culminating point where everybody's got to be all in on things, and so there'll be some weeks that we don't visit, but by and large, those visits happen week to week. And I would say throughout the district, that's a pretty constant thing. And I would say that it's an expectation, really, in our district that people are doing that. I think it can only create a better environment for students to transition to. I don't look at, I always say that vertical teaming is not about egos. It's really about creating the best environment for the students and making those transitions be as seamless as possible. If they go from one campus to the next campus and it feels like a whole new world, you're more likely to lose them, especially if their middle school program and experience has been positive, and they come to a high school where things are different. They're like, okay, this doesn't feel the same. So
Yeah.
trying to, for me, that's one of the biggest things about retention is making sure that you have as many things that you can make feel the same as they go from eighth to ninth grade. You try to do those things. And I think that's been pretty successful for us. And we've grown a lot in the last 4 years. We're up to about 230 in the high school program. And we're this spring we'll be adding one more concert band. So we'll have four concert bands.
Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast with a roster of imaginative composers, including composers who have been featured on this podcast, such as Carol Britton Chambers, Laura Estes, and Tyler Arcari. Excelsior Music Publishing provides new music for concert band, jazz ensemble, solo and ensemble, as well as books and resources for all levels and occasions, including a large and festive selection of music for your fall, holiday, and Christmas concerts. Find your perfect next piece at excelsiamusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. I love the fact that you have other people in front of all the bands. I think that in some areas of the country, when there's less teachers around, that's obviously harder, right? But just the message it gives your kids when you step away and somebody else is on the podium or somebody else is teaching them. That vulnerability you give is really important. And I think a lot of people who maybe self-doubt on how their teaching level tend to not want people in front of their band as much. But I think people need to take a step back, find someone to be in front of your band. It's a great message for your band if you haven't done that before.
Absolutely. And even in scenarios where you might be the only teacher on your campus, and that can be very lonely, and you don't have somebody to kind of bounce those ideas off of. One of the things that's really big in Texas is having consultant clinicians, in periodically. And I would say not just for repertoire, but like early in your year, bringing them out to see what you're doing at the beginning of class to help build positive habits and, the correct fundamentals is what can really transform, the ensemble experience and the literature that you're able to play and the quality that you're able to do with those
Yeah.
things as well. That's a really great. It is vulnerable, but it's really cool that the kids get to see because we think of those clinicians as being like our private lesson. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
They are, and they're interacting with the students. They're interacting with their kids, which we love, and the kids like that too. But the kids, I mean, particularly love whenever, they're offering stuff to us and saying, "Hey, why are you doing it that way? Why don't you try this?"
Yeah.
So we're very lucky to have, a couple of folks that we really trust. Tom Bennett, who's retired from the University of Houston, and then Cindy Lansford, who's also a retired band director in Texas. And I think Cindy probably has been on the Midwest stage maybe more than anybody because she's consulted and clinicked at a lot of schools that have gone to Midwest, so she's probably set some kind of record.
What's the timeline of the application process for Midwest? As you sort of, when did you guys start deciding you wanted to apply? When and how does that whole application look like for people who haven't done that?
Well, I think it's something that if it's something that you want to do, it's kind of always in the back of your mind about the timing of when you want to do it. So for me, I think it was something that I started looking at, a couple of years ago, and just you're always kind of assessing the program and you know how how your instrumentation, just how the program is, what's the health of your program, because, there's the thing about, sometimes people will submit and they'll have a really great band, but it's maybe all older students. And then what's coming in is maybe not as strong, and, hopefully you're in a situation where you can, self rejuvenate and there's quality teaching happening every level. And you hope for that, but for me it was just like making sure not only that that piece of it is where it needed to be, but also just making sure that all the pieces are in place because I think it is I called it in a post earlier this year, it's a Mount Everest type of experience in terms of like the
Yeah.
undertaking because and I've said this a couple of times. I've going to Midwest the last 7, 8 years since I've been a high school band director and seeing these really great, amazing high school programs go and do these wonderful concerts and go, I don't know how they're doing that with just knowing the craziness of the fall and your marching season and just how much, time and resources that takes. But I feel like that is something just you have to be mindful of that. How's your staff? Do you have a staff? Is this something that, are you ready for all those other things that aren't the teaching part, right? Because I think that, you know, that's one piece of it that I think people probably don't think about is, are you ready to do those things? And luckily, again, this is the second time I've gone with the group. The first time I had some really great colleagues that had done it. And so they were able to tell me, get ready, get ready. You're going to have these other things that you have to be, preparing for. And so, this summer I was kind of a worker bee, just kind of lay the groundwork for stuff. But as far as that timeline, we um, really dug in January. I think the kids maybe got some of the music that we were going to play before we left for the break in December last year. And we had already decided on a program. That's the other thing is making sure that you pick music that will feature your band in a good light.
Mm-hmm.
You go to those when you go to Midwest, they do a clinic on submitting and for application process. And Professor Dorsey, Rodney Dorsey, he's the one who kind of leads that, and he talks about it from that standpoint. He's like, really, the number one thing is how good can you make the band sound? Like how beautiful and amazing is the performance that you're submitting? And I think a lot of people get kind of, they get into, well, you have to submit you have to submit more than once. Like you're not going to get on the first try, or they just start thinking about there's lots a lot of little things out there. There's stories about you can't get in on your first try, or you can only you have to submit something that's so substantial. I think we played our submission um, was Honey Boys, and then the Grantham J'étais were the two pieces that we selected. So the J'étais is a little bit like I think that's about 9 minutes. That march is pretty short, maybe 2.5, but it's flashy. It's got technique in it, stuff like that. So, just making sure that what you submit is at a high level. But we just kind of went all in January with the learning of all of that. And the kids really accepted the challenge because I told them like, from day one of the spring semester to when we first performed it, which wasn't for the recording that we used, but just to perform it, was maybe 21 days. And so that's not a normal concert cycle for Texas bands in particular. Usually we're going to go a lot longer. And I just told them this is closer to a collegiate kind of timeline. You're going to get this music and then we're going to work on it pretty intently and try to do our best. And so we had a performance pretty early in the process. We did a joint concert with Baylor as they were getting ready to go to Team A, but that was a great push for us to like get it concert ready. And then we still had a few more weeks after that concert to kind of put the finishing touches on it before
Mhm.
we actually did the recording. Um, where we recorded it a couple of times and had a video, because there's a video piece as well. So I mean, all in, I think we did it. We started in January as far as the preparation of it. Then I think we put on our concert right before our spring break, which is in March, because it's due around that time. So, but yeah, like you said, I mean, it was probably a couple year process to decide that I wanted to do it or that I thought that was a good time. I have a I say pretty, it's an amazing staff. And I knew that they would be able to carry the load in the fall and allow me to be more thinking and focusing on
Mhm.
this whole thing. So I
Isn't it
think just making
amazing?
sure that all those pieces are in place is really, really important.
It's amazing when you have a concert, how kids get ready. You could
Yep,
have 3 months and they're not ready until the end of the third month, but you have it in six
that's
weeks and all of a sudden they're, for my own program, we went to more concerts and I think it's 5 or 6 weeks in between all the concerts. And,
mhm.
I had to step back a little bit in grade level. This was maybe 10 years ago, but guess what? They were ready. And then within a year, they were back to the same grade level, the level they were before, but twice
Uh-huh.
as many concerts. So
Right.
that urgency is really big.
Absolutely. And you're exactly right. If you give somebody 6 months, they'll take 6 months. You give them, 3 weeks, they'll probably get it
Yep.
done. So yeah, I agree with that.
Austin Custom Brass is a proud sponsor of today's podcast. They can be found online at austincustombrass.biz. The Austin Custom Brass shop is located in Kansas City, Missouri. They're frequent attendees at MEAs around the country, including a TMEA in Texas and Kansas and Missouri. They go to Midwest and Chicago and International Trumpet Guild. And give them a call today at 816 410-0826. If it's anything brass, they have it. Beginner to professional. This is a startup company from many years ago that's grown and grown and grown. Trent Austin has done a fantastic job with this. They're great people. They have many types of instruments from Adams to Rath trombones and Shires and Getson and Edwards and Schilke and Lotus and Crotoir and many, many more. They have many new and pre-owned instruments. You can check them out online again at austincustombrass.biz. They also offer a great selection of high quality budget conscious brass instruments for students and band programs, including being the exclusive dealer for Manchester Brass, great company. They also offer Brass Spire, Carroll Brass, John Packer, Wyfort, and of course, our own wonderful line of instruments, a Austin Custom Brass Doublers line. Give them a call today at 816-410-0826 and find out why they can help you grow as a brass player. There are remarkable resources for all brass players, and they will do POs and work within your budget for your band program to get you what you need for your kids. So what's the preparation been like this fall? I know so and how would it be different from what you were doing typically? Obviously, I mean, I've talked to other people who've done this and they give the music out that they're doing at Midwest before they leave for the summer. I'm not sure if you did that or if the kids got it when
Mhm.
they got back, but
Yeah,
obviously they're dealing with marching season as well as trying to prepare for all this. And guess what? No matter what school you go to, kids are kids. So they're dealing with all the things that, the kids in my
hmm
program deal with. It's just different situation. So how has this fall been in the summer in the preparation, especially for the students?
sure. Well, just knowing how much is involved in our fall and the craziness of that, um, and you know, just knowing how little time they would have once school started, because like you say, kids are kids, but band kids are doing all the things, right? They're taking the hard classes and they're doing everything full out. And I wanted to do my best to get the program really picked as soon as I possibly could so that I could get the music in their hands in the summer. We didn't do anything in May. We did about, I think it was two sectionals before July 4th happened. So there was like a sectional 1 week where I did like, and it wasn't like small sectionals. It was kind of like maybe like high brass, low brass, high woodwinds, low woodwind kind of thing, just to get through some of the repertoire that we were thinking about. And I did that 2 weeks before the 2 weeks leading into July 4th. And we had nothing for like a week. And then we did three more before it was time for summer band. And then once summer band came, we didn't do anything with it until school started. Once school started, we did 2 days per week during class, but nothing really outside. I would have them get there a little bit early on those mornings so that we could get a little bit more time. We are on a double blocked schedule for band, so I get an hour and a half with them each day, which is incredibly it's amazing, right? Because especially with high school literature and things like, right now we could run our Midwest program and be able to play all of it. A lot of places it's 45 minutes. You can't even run the whole program in 45 minutes, much less do any kind of warm up or fundamentals. So, but we would do 2 days per week. We had a plan of eventually going to 3 days per week once the show was completely learned for the marching stuff. And we did get there, but once we got to that point, we didn't go down that road. We kept it at 2 days, but we kind of changed it. So what we did is I was doing two full band rehearsals where you know the other two teachers that I teach with, wind teachers that I teach with, were basically just in rehearsal with us on those days. And I changed it. I said, what would you guys think about? Because there were some talks about like, hey, I feel like the top band, at least visually for the marching show, was not behind, but it was just they just weren't getting as the reps that everybody else was getting, right? So I said, well, what if I do a woodwind day and you guys work with brass, and then I do a brass day and you guys work with woodwinds, and then on Thursday I'll do full band. And they really liked that, and that worked out really well for a couple of weeks. So we did maybe 3 or 4 weeks before, or 3 or 4 weeks, kind of in the middle of the season when it was like that. As we approach the end of the season, we just shut down all of Midwest because it's like we're at that point where it's the culmination. This really means a lot to the kids and to the program. I wanted our top band kids to feel like they could kind of go all in on that, right? Because the kids were really good because we did two concerts. We did a concert in September of four of our hardest pieces. And then we did a concert 3 weeks later that included eight of the 10 pieces. So that then we threw in all our easier or lower grade level things just so that we could start performing. And every time we did that, the week of the concert, the kids just really, you could tell they compartmentalized their focus a
Mm-hmm.
lot into the concert band part of it, right? And not as much on the marching band, which totally get all that, right? But as we approached the end of the season, I wanted our students to feel like they could really go all in on the marching season. And I felt like if they felt like they, you know, reach their potential from a performance standpoint and really got to see that through, that it would just mean that they would be even more captive and ready to fully commit in
Mm.
on the Midwest stuff after it was over. So we went on about a 2 week hiatus, where we didn't rehearse any of the Midwest stuff. And we just, so our season ended about 2 weeks ago. As soon as the season was over with BOA San Antonio, we went right into rehearsals. We did Monday through Friday, and then that following Wednesday, we had a concert. We played the full program. So last Wednesday, 6 days ago or so, we performed the whole program. But that's basically kind of how we kind of came up with the system. We talked to other people that had done it, especially here
Hmm.
in Texas, where you're in the marching band thing and all that. And that was kind of what people had done. And the kids have done a really, really, really good job with it. We use a program called Make Music. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
Um, I that program has been very integral in just kind of getting, the kids accountability on notes and rhythms. But that's been a part of our program forever. It wasn't just something that we added for Midwest, so the kids were used to it. But I think that really helped. It made the time that we put together, that we were spent together, more fruitful because the kids could play. Mostly, they could play what they needed to play, and we
Mhm.
were just, trying to make it better. So,
As a side note, I did a episode on Make Music with Philip Walters from Alaska. I
oh,
forget what number it was, but 200, 205, somewhere in there. If people want more about that. Um,
cool.
so the process of having concert after concert, where you take the concert performance and I assume you listen to it and that whole experience, and then you inform not changing music but improving that. So, any advice for directors who maybe haven't done that before and they're looking to use one concert to prepare for something even bigger later?
Well, I would say, well, first of all, just, I mean, is sometimes difficult as that is. I mean, I think about like I'm sorry to keep talking about marching band, but like one of the things that is so kind of really cool about marching band, I think even from the student perspective, is performing is fun, and even if it's not where it's going to be, but like we look forward to every Friday game performing and each week getting to see and hear that marked improvement. And so the idea that we wouldn't do that with our concert stuff, is a missed opportunity, So, and for me, it was like, to me, a big part of Midwest is like, we don't, I mean, in Texas, you don't perform your spring concert with 10 pieces on it. I mean, we're performing 10 pieces. It's, 40, 45 minutes of music. That's a pretty long program. It's a lot of music, especially compared to an 8-minute marching show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just I think the whole piece of Midwest, and one of the things I've been talking to the kids about is that this is not just being able to, you know, play this piece at this time while we're rehearsing it really well, but in the context of a full concert, can you focus on the things that you need to focus to have that be what it can be, right? And so these performances are opportunities for the kids to put themselves in that, you know, the hot seat, for lack of a better word, not that it's all about it being perfect, but it gives them opportunity to kind of feel what it's like to be like, okay, we're on stage, we're performing this now. And so giving them opportunities to perform large chunks of the program is kind of what we were after with that. I specifically decided, and I would do this different with middle school, obviously, but we front loaded the hard things, with the exception of one piece. We front loaded all of that on that first concert, really, again, like you talked about earlier, about just putting that out there and saying, okay, kids, we're going to do this. And it's not going to be what it's going to be in December, but it's going to be something for us to push for. And because of that push, it's going to get better. And I don't know that it's as much about listening to that recording and going, oh, here's all the things that we have to do. But I do think that listening to your recordings and can definitely help guide what you need to be doing in rehearsal. So I'm not saying that, but I think more than anything for this process, just performing early and often is a good thing. And then, like I said, in October, we did pretty much everything but the solo piece that we're doing and our commission. So we did everything. We did 8 of the pieces, and the kids, again, just did a great job and pushed really hard, and it kind of gave them something to um, kind of a benchmark. So
Great. Let's get into some of the details of the trip. What day and what time at Midwest do you perform?
we're performing Thursday the 19th at 3 o'clock,
3 p.m.
and we're in the I believe it's in the 375. I believe it's the one that's the closest to the exhibit hall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
right there around the corner.
So you're performing on Thursday afternoon. When are you leaving Texas? How are you getting there? What are the kind of the travel plans around that?
So we leave Tuesday morning. We're flying there. We have our trailer that will take pretty much, all the big things. We do take our full, we take all of our own percussion equipment. The larger instruments, smaller instruments will be checked on the plane. Of course, taking all the precautions with the wooden instruments and different things like that. But we'll leave that on Tuesday morning. We get there in the afternoon. Um, we'll kind of get our bearings, check into the hotel, and then go over to the conference center. We have a double block. We were lucky enough to get 2 blocks of rehearsal from around 7:15 to 9:45 the first night we're there. We will rehearse Monday morning, but then obviously we won't play, at all Tuesday. So that was a chance for us to get, you know, connect back with the instruments, connect with our literature and our program. So we'll do that evening. Um, and then we're staying through Saturday morning really early. So we have, a lot of things that we're going to do throughout the trip. I don't know if you want me to talk about any of those extras, but
Yes,
um,
yeah. So like when you're thinking about you're going for this big performance opportunity, but you're also in Chicago with a bunch of kids from Texas. So,
right.
how do you
Yeah.
balance that? We want to make this about our objective, but obviously I want to give them some more culture too.
Sure, absolutely. So we are going to do a couple museums while we're there. Field Museum, Museum of Science and Industry. We're going to go see the Blue Man Group. Of course, you have to have, your deep dish. That's a big thing for people that have never been to Chicago, of course. So I think we're going to Connie's, which is a place that I went to before. It's not one that people know about, but they can serve really large groups. And the pizza was great the last time, so I specifically asked for it again this time. We're doing Hard Rock because like every time you go to a city, you've got to go to Hard Rock, right? We're the last night we're there, we're gonna do a dinner cruise on Lake Michigan. That's another popular kind of attraction that a lot of Texas bands over the years have done. It's like the last night, it's kind of just a celebration, fun to go out and do that. The kids will love.
Forgive my lack of knowledge. I assume that's an indoor boat that you're going to be on.
It's an indoor boat. That's
Okay.
correct. I've seen a couple of, so sometimes it's too windy, so they just dock the boat and then you have it. It's on the boat, but you're not going anywhere. And so I'm hoping that we'll actually get to be out, but we'll see. I mean, the weather is you just never know. So we'll see. We're also going to do the sky deck, Willis Tower, and all of that. So it's been pretty busy, you know, 4 or 5 days. We are coming back really early on Saturday. Just obviously gets always butts up close to Christmas and the holidays, so we'll be getting back early on Saturday, unloading the truck, and everybody can have the rest of their break. But yeah, we're looking for. I know the kids are looking forward to getting to do a lot of those things as well. We are going to go on Thursday. The plan right now is after our performance to watch. There's a Japanese band that's performing, I believe, at 5 o'clock. So our plan is to like once our stuff's finished, we'll kind of stick around for that because that's always really special. The performances that are put on by the bands from Japan are just you know really
Crazy.
inspiring. So
Yeah.
yes, so I want the kids to be able to get to see and take in some of the concerts, which obviously will be going to Wiley Middle School's performance on Friday morning. They perform at 8:30, and so we'll be going to support our feeder school as well.
If people don't know, when you perform at Midwest, you have to perform on multiple levels of repertoire. You're not just going to play all hard stuff, right? Nor would you want to play 10 hard pieces. So,
No,
what I'd like to go through is your program, maybe in order, if we could,
sure.
and just tell us a little bit about why you chose it, and then assume that every piece you say the audience has not heard of, So give
Mhm.
like the little plug about like I had a Midwest experience and here's my 10 pieces and this is why I wanted this piece
Sure.
on that one if you would. So what are you opening with?
So we're opening with Commando March, Barber, and so that one has some specific meaning to me. I am a graduate of Curtis Institute of Music. I play trombone, and Barber was, at Curtis and was a student at Curtis. Um, Commando also was the first march that I did for UIL, which is our festival, right? With last year's seniors. And that was the year after the COVID year, right? And so we were doing RUL was in a it just looked a lot different,
Yeah.
masks and all the things and spread out. um, and so I picked that piece as kind of a nod to our seniors who helped us earn this opportunity to be invited and go and
Yeah.
perform. So starting with that, our second piece is Eubanks Embrace.
Mm.
And so, classic Granger. Um, it is, everybody loves Granger. You got to have some classic band stuff on there. It's beautiful. And our one of our consultants, Mr. Bennett, is going to be conducting that. Our third piece is a piece called Fission. It's by John Mackey. And so this one is interesting. I don't know of any other piece that will have that you could say this about. Typically, when you go, marching band literature is either original or it comes from the stage, right, and comes onto the field. So Fission is the piece that John wrote for Carolina Crown this summer, and that was their closer. And I believe there was maybe a consortium that asked for that to be, you know, arranged into a wind ensemble piece. And so we're going to be doing that third on our program. Really, that was kind of a late change. That was the piece that we added the latest. John had kind of reached out at some point, to just kind of gauge our interest in performing it. And at the time, it wasn't a full band piece. It was still in a drum corps version.
Hmm.
And so just, not being able to see the piece, and what it was going to be in the wind ensemble piece. But he ended up sending that to us. I was actually in Mexico on a vacation and I got an email from him and he had completed it. And then I was like, okay, we're doing it. So we ended up changing some of our program. We took two pieces off of our program that we were planning to play and put this in. So that's really exciting, and definitely has a really cool little story to go along with it.
I'm gonna jump in really quick. Can you give us
Sure.
the grade level for all the pieces
Oh,
too
sure,
as we
sure.
talk about it? Just if people are like, oh, that's not even in my ballpark. So
Yeah.
the Commando
The Commandos
March.
are grade Commandos are grade 4,
Yep.
probably. I mean, it's got some hard things in it, but it's relatively short, 3.5 minutes or so. The E Banks is, I think, listed as a grade 3, but sometimes you'll see it on festival as a grade 2. And I particularly wish that they wouldn't just take stuff that's technically less difficult and put it on a lower grade level because I think a lot of times, the slow stuff is really hard.
All slow music is hard.
Yes. Yes. So I think we put it on our program as a grade 3. Fission, I put on as a grade 5. It's 4.5 minutes. So it's pretty active for that. I think, Midwest asks you to grade stuff 1 through 6. We don't have anything that I think we put on as a 6. Then our fifth piece is Flight of the Ravens. It's by Carol Britton Chambers. Um, she's a Texas composer. And that was particularly attractive to me because I knew that we would be able to have her come in. We did that a couple of weeks ago with her. She came in and
Hmm.
got to work with the band a little bit, and that's a unique experience that I wanted the kids to be able to have. She's writing a ton of great music. I mean, her stuff's very popular right now. It's a grade 3, and kind of has a visual aspect to it at the very end, which I won't ruin, but is very
Hmm.
cool. The next piece on our program is a piece called Lyric for Strings. Um, this piece was not known to me really until I happened to see Sheldon Williams, who did his doctorate at UT and I believe teaches at University of West Virginia now. Sheldon has been doing transcriptions of uh, Florence Price, for instance, Adoration. He has an arrangement or
Hmm.
transcription of her work, and so he's finding these masterworks and he's doing transcriptions of them and bringing them to life, and letting people know about these great works that exist. And he posted about the newest project that he was working on and that he was close to finishing, and it was Lyric for Strings. Um, and I was like, okay, let me go. Let me, I need to listen to this work. And I went and listened to it, and it's just a gorgeous piece. And for whatever reason, I'm blanking on the name right now. Let me grab my score.
Go ahead.
So this piece is by George Walker, and he was the first African American composer to win the Pulitzer in music. He also was a Curtis grad, and I know the composer because he wrote a pretty popular trombone concerto, and I'm a trombonist, so I knew his work, but I didn't know the specific work. And so this piece has a pretty cool story behind it. It was originally part of a string quartet. It was a movement from a string quartet that he wrote. He liked it so much and it was written as a homage to his grandmother. And the original title was Lament. So it's basically like a stages of grief kind of piece. It kind of goes through all the stages of grief. You can hear it in the piece. And he liked it so much he turned it into a string orchestra piece. And it's just when I heard it, I was like, I have to do this, and so the question became, will this transcription fit the band and all of that? And it is he retained the original key. So at the very beginning, it is in uh, E flat minor, I believe. It goes to E flat major. It is quite it's got a lot of flats.
Hmm.
So it definitely poses some interesting challenges, but it is such a very emotional piece. And we've really enjoyed working on that one. I'm kind of very excited for people to hear what Sheldon's done with it, um and for the kids to get to perform it, because it is one of those lyrical pieces that I think has the potential to really touch people. And I love that we're taking something that has not really been performed in the wind idiom, and we're taking something that's really beautiful in strings and doing it in the band world too. So excited for that one. The next piece, and again on that one, I'd probably say grade 4. I mean, it's a little rangy, but not too bad, and it's just really the key signature stuff, right? And there's a lot of maturity that's required in it as well. The next piece is kvetch. It's spelled Kvetchers, but in the notes in the score it says that it's pronounced kvetch. And so this is a Laura Estes piece. It's actually been performed at Midwest, and this is a little bit by design. So I mentioned earlier that we have one of our feeders is Styles Middle School, and they've been to Midwest a couple of times. This was on Styles's program the last time they went. And I chose it specifically because we have kids in our program in this band that did not get to go to Midwest due to COVID. And so some of those kids I wanted to have something in our program that was just kind of, again, a nod to that thing that
Yeah.
happened. And for those kids, they're getting to actually, do this, but several years removed from the actual time that Styles went. Kvetch is a grade 2.5. If you listen to it, you might think that it sounds a little bit more like a grade 3, but I definitely think that it's probably more in that mid-grade level.
I did an episode with Laura Estes
Oh, okay.
early hundreds or whatever. We talked about this piece too, and a
Yeah.
lot of composers. So there's a famous composer, Dan Buckfitch from Idaho. I don't know if you know Dan Buckfitch's name, but he always says it's easy to make music that makes people cry. It's hard to make music that makes people laugh. And
Yes.
Kvetch is definitely one of those pieces that will make you laugh.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what we do. We get you with lyric for strings, and then we lift your spirits with kvetch,
Yep.
right? The next piece is um, was our commission. I reached out to uh, Viet Quang um, very early in our process, and once we were invited, just knowing that he's pretty popular right now. I love the way that his stuff sounds, and he's also a Curtis graduate, and I knew that we would you know, um, share a lot, in that experience. And so I wanted to talk with him and ask him to write us a piece. And so um, he accepted our invitation to write a piece, and I feel incredibly fortunate because I know that he's very busy, but for whatever reason he wanted to do this, and so we were very, very fortunate that he wrote this piece. It's called Evergreen. And he wrote one of his really popular pieces right now is a piece called Deciduous that he wrote, and it was and he talks about it, that it's kind of the idea is losing your leaves, right? Deciduous tree, losing your leaves, and his father passing away kind of put him in a difficult place for a couple of years where he was just struggling with that loss. It was the first loss that he had that was significant, somebody that really close to him. And when he sent the notes for Evergreen, it kind of was very interesting to see how the pieces are connected because obviously Evergreen is also a tree, but Evergreen is a little bit shorter than deciduous, and Evergreen represents all the things in your life that are constant, that we rely on, or the day to day, that many times are what allow us to move forward after we've experienced that loss. So it's really beautiful and it's very well done, and I'm really excited for people to hear Evergreen. I would say the grade level on Evergreen, if you were looking at the individual parts, from a technical standpoint, you probably say they're grade 4. But as is the case with most of his music, it is very it's pretty transparently written, and it requires a high level of individual accountability in terms of counting. So, and just placing the part together. So flute one, two, three are not playing any of the same rhythms. Or if they are playing the same rhythms, the rhythm or the motifs are offset by like a beat,
Hmm.
right? So, the kids have to be very independent. And so from that ensemble standpoint, I would say that it probably leans towards a grade 5 because of that. The next piece on the program is Serengeti Dreams, Robert
Okay.
W. Smith. Oh, interesting connection I didn't say on this. So Kvetch, Laura Estes was Viet Quang's middle school band director.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yes. So there's a connection there that's really, kind of cool as well. Um, and then uh, Viet also has a connection with Robert W. Smith. He's was the first composer that he heard that he tried to emulate in his
Hmm.
music when he was writing music as a very young, student, middle school, high school. For me, Serengeti Dreams was the first piece that I ever taught as a band director when I first started teaching. And obviously, he's no longer with us, and he passed away before I think last September, right? So people had already settled on programs for Midwest, and so I know that you know Wiley's playing in his Encanto, and I think you're going to see a lot of his music performed this year, just as a kind of an homage to him and all of
Hmm.
his contributions to band music and music education. But this one was special to me just because I had taught it before, and it's a great piece, and it's like an opportunity at a grade 1 level to for kids to feel like they're, playing something pretty substantial, definitely sounds harder than it is. The percussion are very active, right? And it's got a lot of kind of ethnic, drumming vibe kind of thing, with all that. So it's a diverse selection to perform as well. Second to last piece we're going to perform is Penny Lane. The Canadian brass have an arrangement of that they've played as a quintet for I think a number of years. And then at some point, um, uh, I think it's Chris Diedrich and Chris Coletti. Chris Coletti's still a trumpet player, I believe, in the ensemble. Wrote a band accompaniment. So it's written to be um, trumpet with piccolo trumpet and then band accompaniment is how it's written. I found it because UT, University of Texas Wind Ensemble, did it. Caleb Hudson is now teaching at UT, and they did that on a program last year. And I was like, oh, that's so well done. And he's fabulous. He's amazing. He used to be in the Canadian brass himself. And so we asked him, and he agreed to come and perform it with us. So we're excited about that. And this was one of those that I don't think that it was actually published. And Midwest does have rules, so you're allowed to do one manuscript, which Evergreen is our manuscript, but everything else has to be published to perform. And a lot of it has to be published within the last few years. So, Hal Leonard, it's actually published by Canadian Brass Publications, but they are distributed by Hal Leonard. So, all those folks got together and said, yes, we can get this done and we can have it for sale so that you can perform it.
Well, that's
So
great.
we're very thankful for them. And this is going to be, we haven't actually performed it with Caleb yet. We did it, our lesson teacher filled in on our last concert. So we did a couple rehearsals with him and then put it together so that the band could get used to playing with a soloist so that we're prepared, But now as we move into this next, our heading into our send-off concert and heading into Midwest, we'll be doing those with Caleb. So
Just a quick sidebar question. What did you teach your students about accompanying a soloist versus being their own ensemble? How is that different?
well, we've only had a couple of opportunities to actually rehearse with the soloist, right? So, um, luckily that piece is written to be, and obviously it's, you're playing with piccolo trumpet. So that tessitura and that color, balance is not too much of an issue, but obviously making sure that you play with the soloist is very important. The thing, basically, what I did with the kids is, in some of our rehearsals, and the piece from a standpoint of the band grade is probably a 3 or less. Obviously the piccolo trumpet stuff is not a 3. It's pretty hard and super high. Um, but one of the things I talked to the kids about, how many of you have ever been accompanied by a pianist that made your job easier? Right? How many of you have ever been accompanied by a accompanist that made your job more difficult? Right? So, we want to be that for our soloists, and that requires, collaboration. It requires that we, even though this piece is maybe not as rehearsed, like we haven't rehearsed that as much as, our harder pieces, we need to be, we have our antennae out. We need to be connecting and watching and making sure that we are, making the soloist job as easy as possible. So that's basically what we've talked about. And then obviously that piece kind of does pose some stylistic challenges because it's, there's a little bit of a swing feel to the eighth notes, right? And so getting our, classical prodigy, band children to sound, more like the piece is something that we've been working on for sure.
Well, that's
So
great.
yeah. And then we're finishing the program with the fourth movement of the Pines of Rome. And
Who's the
that
arranger? Who's the arranger?
we're doing the Duker.
Got it.
Yeah. That's the one that Hal Leonard is distributes. It's a European. I'm trying to remember the publisher off the top of my head. I can't remember, but Hal Leonard is a distributor of that one. Obviously it's got the extra brass, the band parts, and we are utilizing some brass professionals from six extra brass. It's four trumpets and a couple extra trombones, which he wrote. A lot of times you see that with flugelhorns and euphoniums because Respighi had in mind a more conical sound for that. But you see more and more that modern bands and orchestras are using trumpets and trombones. So we're using trumpets and trombones, and our we have some again guests that are helping us with that. And so Cedar Park Winds is a community group here in our area made up of lots of band directors, private teachers. They're performing at Midwest. I believe they perform on Friday. I think they're Friday at 5. But we're going to use a couple of brass players from their band to perform with us, and then we're also using some brass players from the Austin Brass Collective, which is a brass group here in the area, also made up of brass professionals and private teachers and such. They use our campus a lot to rehearse, and they do concerts there too. So we're going to team up with them, and they're going to be doing the extra brass stuff. But yeah, so that's the program. We had toyed with ending a little bit differently, but we all kind of settled. And I think when it's all said and done, adding any other pieces would have been overkill just from the time
Hmm.
standpoint. You got to be off the stage. Basically, the concert has to be an hour, right? So that would be something that I would probably tell people is to, less is more. I think we settled on, by the publisher timing, we settled on about 41 minutes of music, but we've been timing our run throughs and our concerts, and we're right at an hour,
Hmm.
and we'll clean up our logistics and we'll get it under an hour. But if we had added any more music to this, I think we'd be, kind of worried about going over time. So, but yeah, that's the program.
About 10 years ago, I was getting ready for a big performance with my wind ensemble, not Midwest level, but one of these, NAFME regional kind of things. And I was hanging with one of our good family friends, Linda Gamma. I don't know if you know Linda's name, but we were talking with Linda because she'd been in Midwest a couple times with Robinson Middle School. And we're like, so do you have any advice for me? She said, yep. When you get there, every band director in the audience is going to be judging your band. And they're going to be thinking about how much better their band is than yours. And she said, screw them. You're there. Enjoy the time with your kids. So don't worry about anything else. Just enjoy the time. And
Right.
I thought I took that at the time, and that was a great. So for anybody who's got big performances coming up and they're worried about imposter syndrome and all that, doesn't
Oh,
matter.
no.
Just do your thing and enjoy it.
Well, in Texas, we like to think we feel the Midwest audience is a friendly audience. The one that's scary in Texas is if you happen to, win what we call honor band, which is, there are different classifications. If you win honor band and you perform at TMEA, that's, I mean, people are still always appreciative and they're always going to, you know, be happy for you and respect, and they'll be appreciative of the kids and their efforts, but that's a tough crowd, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, I know with Midwest, it's just, it is a different kind of thing. And I do feel like our program has something for everybody. I think it's varied. It's got a lot of, it's got your classic stuff, and it's also got some transcriptions. It's got some new things. It's got some fresh things, some things that sound different than anything else. So I think our kids appreciate that too, getting to play new and different repertoire, which again, that's part of the Midwest thing is going and performing new things so that we can further the cause of new and different works and composers.
Well, definitely best of luck to your kids on your trip and the musical experiences and the memories you're going to make. I'm going to put you on the spot real quick as
Okay.
we end. You're a trombone player, so you have an audience of trombone of band directors all the way from inexperienced to very experienced to college teachers all the way down to beginning teachers. What's something that we should help our trombone players with that is like a common mistake that we can improve people with?
Well, this might be surprising. I would say that teach the students how to be more focused on how relaxed and how they're using their air at the very beginning. I wouldn't invite students to play. And some people are really big on using a ton of air, but doing it through force, you know. Um, I mean, I know a lot of people will start their students with mouthpiece buzzing. I think that tends to invite a lot of tension in the early stages. So one of the things that I would focus on is starting your trombones and really all of your brass with air, and then creating a vibration with some kind of resistance. If that's the instrument, that's great. In Texas, and what I've done is use straws. So like for like trombones, you could use the jumbo straws. For the other brass, you can use different diameter straws, and they can put the mouthpiece in there, and that kind of creates a little bit of resistance that's similar to how they play, right, on the instrument. So, I just think it's really important that in the early stages that you don't force sound to happen, you allow sound to happen. When kids are vibrating the mouthpiece or buzzing the mouthpiece at the very beginning stages, they tend to go, okay, this is how I create sound. And they're creating all of the resistance here in their face.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to contribute to tight sounds. And sometimes that works itself out, and sometimes it just sticks, right? So, and middle school kids can sound beautiful and open and resonant. You have to encourage that from the very beginning. So that would be the biggest thing that I would say with trombones. And one of the things that you can help with that too is that when it comes to equipment, which I know everybody's like, I want my kids to have intermediate level instrument right off the bat, because like with a trombone player, get a student getting all the way to high school with a non F attachment, like parents are probably going to purchase or rent an instrument, and that's going to be it. So you want to start them on an instrument that they can at least stay on with, and it won't be a detriment, right? But if there's any way possible, and a lot of times, like our instrument companies here and music stores here will work with us on this. Start your beginners on a small bore instrument, like no F attachment. Make it easy to hold, make it easy to make sound, so that they're not bringing baggage to how to play. They're not forcing anything to happen. And then in that second semester, switch everybody over to intermediate bore, and then they can stay on that for probably at least 2 or 3 years, right? But just making the beginning of their tone production journey seem easy and not something they have to try really hard for. If you're using a large bore instrument right off the bat, that can be difficult because they're small. They don't have the lung capacity that we have. And if they're having to use a ton of effort just to get a sound or to hold a note, right? Inevitably, they're going to figure out that if they just, clench their lips together a little bit more, that they can make that note last a little bit longer. And so that's what I would say. Smaller equipment, smaller mouthpieces to start, and start with air and go to vibration rather than just vibration immediately.
Love that. Ryan, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.